This is a quick video about the Aune SC1 clock. You can pronounce it Aune, however you want to. I was actually told that you do pronounce it Aune, as in a Nordic pronunciation. But I've been using it with the S9c Pro DAC from the same brand that I previously reviewed. And it was only natural that I asked for this clock because it retails for a relatively cheap price, around the same price as the DAC. In this case for the clock, £620, 700 euros or $600. But also because the S9c Pro DAC is actually competing, in my opinion, with DACs in the 1200 to 1300 type price point on sound terms I'm talking about, for actually half the money. If you want to try an S9c Pro DAC or this clock and you're in the UK, then contact Adam at Eden Audio. He's the sole distributor seller for Aune products in the UK. Mention you heard it here first. Also, if you want to get my take on why I think this particular DAC in combination with this clock is better than pricier DACs, then sign up to my Patreon. It's cheap as chips at $5, €5, £5 a month. You can access a 7-day free trial, and the link to my Patreon page is in the description. But back to this review, the SC1 clock actually uses the same case as the S9c Pro, and it's a nice, well machined, very fine grade type aluminium. And despite the fact it's got a curved top, you can actually stack the units because there are rubber feet on the underside of each case. All DACs need a clock to recreate correct signal timing, the idea being that more accurate clocks means better timing of the data, which supposedly feeds into improved sound quality. Obviously you're trying to tackle jitter better, jitter being time distortions of the audio signal that can affect sound quality. I'm not here on this channel to convince you that you need to buy a product based on technical discussion, because firstly, I think that's boring. Secondly, I'm not qualified enough. And thirdly, if you want to make it a requirement that you predict the quality of a product, its sound quality based on technical specifications, when you no way can predict it, then you can go off and put your little white lab coats on, go over there and have a discussion amongst other people. I'll stay in the real world. But one thing I will say about what some commentators say about master clocks is that they say they only really are useful to the extent of the low noise effects on the clock, and also that DACs are designed to high tolerances already, or that the clock in DACs is designed to high tolerances. But the SC1's clock has a particular type of crystal oscillator of a particular standard called an oven controlled crystal oscillator, and the principle is that under an electric field it slightly changes its shape, and when the voltage is removed the crystal returns to its original shape, generating a small voltage. And because the crystal has its own resonant frequency, or frequency at which it changes shape, this oscillating voltage is then used to time the audio signal in the DAC. One of my subscribers asked me what inputs this clock has, but other than power inputs, there's no other types, tying in with my explanation about timing and oscillators in DACs. Essentially, you can think of this clock as being the conductor of an orchestra with a conducting baton that's waving a signal to the orchestra, who you could think of as the DAC, and that the better the conductor times the signal to all the people that are in the orchestra, the better and more organised the music is going to sound. Ultramarine is an English progressive electronic music duo formed in 1989 by Ian Cooper and Paul Hammond. Their music encompasses down-tempo techno, house and ambient music with acoustic and jazz instrumentation, very English-sounding electronica. They are best known for their stellar 1991 concept album called Every Man and Woman is a Star, reissued on Rough Trade Records the following year. Ultramarine feature folky and jazzy electronica with lots of skip beat percussive sounds of acid house style fame, overlain with flutes and jazz instruments, but with strong melodic tracks. Their subsequent album was called United Kingdoms, which was heavily folk influenced with British themes, and was followed by the jazzier, faster and more incisive album called Bel Air. Of recent, we have seen a resurgence of Ultramarine with albums like Signals into Space, which came out in 2019. Ultramarine have been one of my favourite electronic down-tempo artists. Standout tracks on the Everyman album for me include the track Honey, a lovely floaty number that has you melting away to the repeating instrumentation and simple melodies, or Saratoga, a fun and engaging looping track with strong bass lines, flutes and other percussive instruments. The whole album is so well crafted with its dub-centric rhythms, it deserves to be right up there as a 90s classic against the Orb's UF Orb or Aphex Twin's Selected Ambient Works 85 to 92 album. Absolutely tremendous and gorgeous album, and I'd definitely recommend it if you like this type of music and don't listen to traditional, boring, perhaps audiophile style tastes. Quickly talking about the downsides of this product, I particularly didn't like the rear on-off switch at the back when I first started using it, because you have to sort of reach around. It's the same as the S9c Pro as well. When I used it a bit more, I actually got used to it. But this is, I was told by the brand, to do with the fact that their users have asked them to have a on-off switch or main on-off switch because they prefer to turn the units fully off. I think this ties into this brand being more thought of, or the design of these products being more thought of to be for headphone desktop use. That shouldn't be a reason why you discount these DAC products for hi-fi use. As I've said before, they are very, very good for that. This switch at the back is obviously annexed to the AC coming in via an IEC connection, but you can also use DC power via this little XLR socket on the back. The relevant pins are shown in the manual, the positive and negative pins. There are 4 clock outputs, 75 ohm BNC style. They work simultaneously, and there are 2 sine wave outputs and 2 square wave types. If you're using the S9c Pro, I'm not sure what you can use this with as far as other components are concerned because I haven't tried. Then you use the square wave outputs. You have to look at the S9c Pro's manual to see that. It doesn't actually say in this particular manual for the SC1 clock. With my loan unit, I did get this shortish 20 centimeter BNC to BNC cable, which is used obviously for connecting the output of the clock to the BNC input of the S9c Pro. I think you get this in customer units as well. It wasn't just thrown in the box by the distributor for the purposes of my review. The front on-off button is for the output of the clock, whether it's on or off. It's not an on-off button, as I said, for the unit itself. But when the output is on and this clock is overriding the clock in the S9c Pro, a little symbol comes up in the S9c Pro's display as 10M. This purportedly relates to the megahertz rating of the clock. The manual says that it takes 5 minutes for this clock to warm up, whereupon the red text in the display warm changes to the white text RTF on. Now, I don't actually know what RTF means because it's not actually explained in the manual, but that's perhaps not that important for this explanation. It doesn't really affect your musical enjoyment of using the S9c Pro because the DAC is obviously still working. You can still get music out of your system. It's just, it takes some time for the clock's output to switch on. If anything, I found it more like 3 minutes than 5 minutes though. The front on-off button is useful in making direct comparisons between using its output and using the clock in the S9c Pro. And mainly, I found the difference was in bass. So there's greater bass definition, the bass goes deeper and it's more impactful. And there's also better quality in bass transient dynamics. If you turn the output off, so you're relying just on the S9c Pro's clock, bass dynamics become flatter and just of a lesser quality. And that's the most obvious thing that I noticed. It is a small change and I think you really have to hear out for it. It's not something that's going to be, I'm going to sit here and suggest to you a profound difference or leave it to any kind of ambiguity in that respect. if I was pushed, I'd say it's in the order of a 5% improvement in sound quality. But my position really with this clock, I think, is that even though the change in my system, at least, because I can only talk about my system, even though that change is small, because the S9c Pro is such a good quality at challenging DACs in the £1,200 price point already, and that you do get a small perceptible difference in sound quality with this clock, that it represents a good decision to buy with this particular DAC and maybe other DACs, because it's a sort of final rubber stamping exercise on a really great product. That said, I would add that after using this clock and DAC with Aune's Class A S17 headphone amp, which I'm due to review too, I found the clock's use more obvious. I'd go so far as saying it offers more like a 5 to 10% uplift in this system, which is very decent in audiophile terms. Put it this way, once you have it, you won't want to go back. Better bass in all the ways I described before, playing Ultramarine, Sabres of Paradise and Orbital, all way more dynamic. Recordings also sound as if everything is more organised and placed, in the sense vocals are not as flat at you in a pitchy fashion. So one of my patrons did actually buy this combo on my recommendation. I thought it would be useful as a second opinion to read out his comments that he put in my Patreon post. So he says, "Simon, you may recall I purchased a S9c and SC1 2 weeks ago, and the DAC arrived first by 2 days. I was very impressed with the DAC out of the box, and then the clock arrived. I could hear an upgrade immediately, deeper bass and more shimmer in the treble. The clock in my system is worth every penny." So in summary, I would recommend this clock. I don't know how it works with other components, as I think I said in the video, so my use of it has only been with the S9c Pro, but considering the prices on offer here and the overall combination that this duo achieves, it's a no-brainer really. Thanks very much for watching.